Good morning. Today is Election Day and the last opportunity to vote in the May 28th primary runoff elections. Vote centers opened at 7 a.m. and today, so far, a little over 3,000 voters have voted. At close of early voting on Friday, May 24th, over 30,400 voters cast their ballot in the election, 60% in person, 40% by mail. Primary elections are how the Republican and Democratic parties determine who their prospective nominees will be for the November general election. The May 28th primary runoff elections are being held to determine the winner for the contest in which no candidate received more than 50% of votes during the March 5th primaries. The important thing for voters to remember is that they must vote in the same party's runoff election that they voted in during the March 5th primaries. So if a voter cast a ballot in the Republican primary or Democratic primary March 5th, you will then need to vote in the same primaries for today, May 28th, or if you voted during early voting. If a voter did not cast their ballot in the March 5th primary, then they can choose either party's primary to vote in today. So if they did not vote March 5th and you're voting today, you can choose either party's primary to vote in. The address where a voter is registered and which party's primary they choose to vote determines the contest that will be on their ballot. Here is why we always announce, go to harrisvotes.com, look up your sample ballot so you can predict and see what will be on your ballot. Not all Republican Party voters in Harris County will have contests on their ballot today. It will only be those Republican registered voters in Congressional District 7 and Congressional District 29. Those are the only two races on the Republican Party's primary that will be on the runoff ballot. All March 5th primaries for the Republican Party were determined March 5th. For the Democratic Party primary, there's at least 3 countywide contests on the ballot. So all Democrats will see the Justice 14th County Court of Appeals District, the State Judicial District of 486 District Judge, County Tax Assessor Collector on their ballot. Those are the 3 countywide races. Again, that's the 14th County Court of Appeals District, place 3, and the 486th District Judge and the County Tax Assessor Collector. Also, there are some Democratic voters who will see that are registered in State Senate District 15. This is the race to fill the long-term race for our former mayor, John Whitmire, and State Representative District 139 and State Representative District 146 and Constable Precinct 5. That's a mouthful. So again, for Democrats countywide, you will have 3 races and a possibility of 3 or 4 races by district. So because contests on the voters' ballot will vary, again, go to harrisvotes.com, put in your name, your address. It will pull up your sample ballot so that you're prepared. You can find the nearest voting center near you. There are over 300 vote centers to choose from today. You can vote absolutely anywhere, just like you can during early voting on Election Day. You can vote anywhere. harrisvotes.com. You can take written materials inside with you. Maybe that's your sample ballot. Maybe it's just your notes, but not your cellular device or any electronics. So remember, within 100 foot of the poll, to be sure that any items that you take inside with you are written materials. Again, 313 voting centers today. The polls are open until 7 o'clock p.m. As long as you're in line by 7, you will have access to vote. There are 7 acceptable forms of IDs that we want to remind you to take into the poll with you. That is your Texas driver's license, all documents from the Department of Public Safety. Maybe it's your Texas election identification certificate, a handgun license, United States military identification card, citizenship document, or passport. And if you don't have one of those documents, you can fill out what a form is called a RID to provide another documentation with your name and address there, but it will require you to cure your vote following there. So again, polls are open till 7 o'clock p.m. today. Over 300 vote centers. You can vote absolutely anywhere. There are some very important races that will need to be determined today. And as you all heard, at the end of early voting, over 30,000 have voted. We know that we're in a very large county with at least 2.5 million registered. So we ask you to get out to vote, keep up the vote. We know it's been election after election, but this election is just as important as all the rest. Are there any questions?
How's it been so far this morning?
The question is, how's it been so far this morning? Well, the polls opened up at 7. We've had over 3,000 voters to vote, and we're running smooth. Again, during the primary, Democrats and Republicans have joint primaries. So when you go into the poll, one of the very first things you're going to be asked, are you voting Democratic or Republican? That's not out of the normal. That is exactly what happens in a primary. So the polls are running well and smooth. We just need more voters. So hopefully someone's watching and listening to get out and cast their ballot before the end of today. Today will determine, once again, the individuals that will be on the November general ballot on both party sides. So today is running smooth. We just need to see more voters. Next question. Yeah, I never give a time on final results. The question was about what time do we think we're going to have results in. What I can tell you is shortly after 7 o'clock p.m., we do provide results in terms of early voting. So you'll be able to see how the turnout was for mail ballot voters and for early voting in person. Tonight, shortly after 7, our election judges and clerks at those 300 plus locations will be breaking down all their equipment, filling out all their paperwork, and then bringing them into our rally site. So we don't ever have a predictive time that the results will be fully done, but we continue to count votes throughout the night until we are complete and we've received every single one of those vote centers. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. In terms of Senate District 15, we know that there was a special election May 4th. Today is May 28th, which will fill the permanent seat for our current mayor, John Whitmire, who was the former senator. So clarifying Senate District 15, along with other races. So again, we encourage you to go to harrisvotes.com, look at your sample ballot, take a quick skim of it, and head to the polls to get your vote out today. Any other questions? Yes, right now we are working on moving into a new facility. So we'll share more information in the near future about where that facility is at and when we will be moving in, but it'll be in a new facility. So kind of incoming news, right? So again, today is the May 28th runoff election. There will be another runoff election June 15th, but we want to make sure that voters are clear what this election is for. It is the primary runoff, the remaining of those races that did not have 50% plus one of the vote. Any other questions?
If somebody's watching like right now, they're confused, who can they contact?
Yes. If anyone has questions about today's election, harrisvotes.com is our website, but you can also call our election hotline, 713-755-6965, 713-755-6965. Any questions about today's election here in Harris County? Now, we serve as Harris County voters, so if you're in Fort Bend, Brazoria, or other surrounding counties, you'll need to call your local county elections offices there to have your questions answered in terms of today's election. In regards to weather, yeah, so you should know we're kind of an emergency management unit at any time. We have had, some weather turbulence the last couple of weeks, and we do expect to have a backup in any way possible. So if the weather picks up and gets tough for us, we continue to run the election polls through 7 p.m. unless there is a need to shut down for safety, right? But right now, we're expected to be open until 7 o'clock p.m. We know that one weather event on one part of the county may not be the same on another side of the county. So if there are any updates in regards to the weather or the impact or power outages and things of that nature, we'll be updating on all of our social media platforms, our website, and providing information to you today. But I'm hopeful that we can get through this day without major weather events. Any other questions?
1%, 2.5 million registered voters are expected to vote. 1%. Are we seeing voter fatigue? Why we're getting such low turnouts? Is it one election after another? Is it we need campaign reform? Let's cast a wide net. Are we ever going to see voting reform go on where we don't have constant
Well, I think you have a lot of great points that you've made and questions that you've asked in terms of voter fatigue, elections. Will we see any reform? I can't answer that question. I am not the state representative. I am the Harris County clerk. But what I can tell you is there a legislation session that's coming up next year. And I think voting and elections is always on the table in the state of Texas, right? That's just the reality. In terms of why there's such a low percentage of voters, there could be various reasons why. Look, next month will be 6 elections that Harris County has conducted, 6 elections since last November, back to back to back to back to back. That's November, December, March primaries, May 4th special, now the runoff, and then another runoff in June. And so, you know, voters are driven by many things. One is what's on the ballot, what candidates on the ballot, what platforms are on the ballot, and what's important to them. And I think when you have elections back to back to back, we can consider it voter fatigue, or it might be measures on the ballot that voters are not moved by. But when you have this many elections back to back to back, you know, I would like to I'd be interested in hearing some conversations in terms of minimizing the days of elections and what's on the ballot at the same time, but that's not up to me. And I think that is up to the legislatures here in the state of Texas to have more conversations about elections, how they impact the state, how they impact this county, and what's productive for voters in the state of Texas. So I can only assume that we've had so many elections. A lot of voters may have fatigue. They may say, hey, I'm just ready for November. Let's figure out where the last decisions will be made. There could be many of reasons. As much as I'd like to think I have a magic wand, I can't predict all the reasons why. But what you see here is, you know, it's a smaller election. It's a runoff. There are minimal races on here, and some voters are just maybe not driven to those ballots. But you're here today. Folks will know there's an election. Thank you for covering today's topic. We are doing all we can to remind voters that today is an election, and we hope to see more people to the polls today. Any other questions? All right, harrisvotes.com is your all elections website. If you have any questions, you can call our call center, 713-755-6965. You have until 7 o'clock p.m. I say no excuses. We've had major weather events from May 4th on down, and one thing's for sure is Harris County elections is still here. Our election workers and staff are at polling locations ready to receive voters today. So thank you for your time.